係 Kenneth.
Let us resume. Kenneth. Yes, Chairman. Kenneth, during the recess, you said that we would deal with Chapter 2 first. If we want to refer back to Chapter 1, then in the meetings on Chapter 1, especially on the issue of law reform, we can say in the Chapter 1 conclusions and also in our recommendations, we can include that point, all right? Yes, Chairman. That will be the easier way to do it. Now can I start Chapter 6 of the report, Part 6? Yes, please. Way forward. Actually, at the beginning of the hearing on Chapter 2, I asked the officials, and also during questions on Part 1, some members asked similar questions. But here, Part 6, I think it is a very important part. The Director of Audit gave a very comprehensive observation. Let us look at 6.2. This is a paragraph on the 2013 LRC report. It mentions the deficiencies of this regulatory framework of charities. I will allow the officials to let us know what policies they have taken about these four. What is their attitude towards these four? Let us have timetables and work progress. Please let us know what you did about these 4 points and what is the work progress. I will allow them to comment freely on 6.2a to D. Yes, please. Kenneth, in Jan 9, submitted by the administration, there is mention of this, but we can take this opportunity to have an oral exchange so everybody understands the situation. Well, yes, I'm aware of Jan 9. I can see the written reply there, but I like them to say in summary what they did. So when we write our report, we can write on Part 6. Secretary. Thank you, Chair. I agree with Mr. Leung that we can summarize our thinking on the way forward and our response to the Director of Audit's recommendations. As you can see, we have given you a written reply on these 4 points. But I'd like to go back a little to the LRC report. The Director of Audit has commented on that report. The LRC has done a rather detailed study. And one of the recommendations in that report, which is a very important one, is such that since in different departments of the government, different laws are administered, and the public may not understand the situation clearly, and they may not know what the regulatory framework is like. So the LRC proposed to set up a charity commission. That is a very important proposal at the time. The purpose is to have it become the regulator. Many members mentioned that already, that we should have one regulator. And so that we can promote good governance and good management for charitable organizations. So the LRC has made a recommendation for setting up a charity commission.
And the setting up of this commission would include 8 terms of reference. Let me highlight some of them. For example, they refer to a single regulatory regime. It could determine whether an organization was a charity, and it could also monitor the legal compliance of charitable organizations, or it could also vet the charity event applications. It could also appoint investigators to investigate charity organizations, whether they had any poor governance or breaches of regulations. So after these have been mentioned, if we just look at the wording or the intention, it's to strengthen the governance. So we want a single regulatory regime to handle this. But after the submission of this recommendation and when public consultation was performed, the report mentioned that the majority of public response was not in support of this recommendation, especially regarding the setting up of a single regulatory regime and appointing it different powers and authorities. So that means the recommended work was not supported by the general public. So their conclusion was, if there is no consensus in the community on this issue, then they could not move forward. Well, why does the public on one hand request a regulatory framework, but when the LRC submits a specific recommendation, why does the public object to it strongly? Why do they object? That's very interesting. So, looking at the LRC's public consultation highlights, I'd like to just focus on some of them, why they think a single regulatory regime should not exist. Some members of the public feel that if there was a single regulatory framework, and if it had such powers, they were worried that the powers were too wide-ranging and that there was a lack of check and balances, and it would interfere with the running of charitable charity organizations, especially if they had punitive and investigative powers. And the religious bodies also had strong views. Chairman, Ms. Tanya Chan, it's not just us who are reading the report. A lot of the public are also following this topic, so let's allow the Secretary to expound. The religious bodies also object, and the reasons being that if there were a setting up of a body to regulate religious organizations' fundraising, it would interfere with their activities. Chairman, I want to provide this as a backdrop. The Audit Commission has accurately described that after putting forward their recommendations, they would like us to see what could be done within the government. So in the previous 2 meetings, we said the LRC, after it published, 1 month after it's published its report, the government set up a committee notifying all the relevant government departments to study this issue, and the different government departments also responded. We had convened 2 meetings, so that is the progress. So in one hearing, we talked about the complexity of the matter. Given the complexity and obstacles doesn't mean that we should be prevented from doing our job. So in the audit report 6.11, there have been 2 recommendations. One is to accelerate the pace. All the bureau departments need to formulate a response to the recommendation of the LRC report, and there should be improvements where warranted. We agree totally with the Audit Commission report. So we have not waited for the PAC recommendations. Within this month, the bureau and departments will focus on the short-term concerns, including the functions of 1823 and enhance the transparency. For example, guidelines. We want to have these prepared by the different bureaus and departments. So we do have some progress, but regarding the overall direction, on one hand, setting up a single regulatory framework, it seems that is quite a major obstacle. We see the LRC's consultation also came across this response, but I recommend that our different bureaus and departments they need to make improvements within the legislative framework. Ms. Tanya Chan, I'll have Kenneth ask first. Well, I do not wish to digress too far from Chapter 2 regarding charitable fundraising activities, but I would rather ask the officials specific questions. I don't want to talk about the LRC direction. I'll set that aside for the time being. Chairman, we see that in paragraph 6.2c, I think this has specific impact on charitable fundraising. For example, in 6.2c, inconsistent standards or requirements on governance, accounting, and reporting by charities. We saw that there are 3 departments with 3 licenses, and different activities require different accounting and audited report. They also talk about accrual basis or cash basis of accounting. So I want to ask the government, have you considered the accounts or audited report of these different activities, or even accounting method? Could it be unified and standardized, so we shouldn't have to refer to 3 memos or guidelines? We can provide something consistent, or could we have 3 guidelines but the same? Could you respond to that? So please refer to 6.2c. It focuses on governance, accounting, and reporting. I am referring to the 3 activities and 3 licenses. Chairman, we can examine that, especially in our previous session. We had different departments where they have a different practice. So we will follow up this in our task force. So Mr. Leung, Kenneth Leung asked you, would you have a single standard for these policies? Chairman, I had responded that I would go back and look into it. Could you provide a timetable? Ms. Tanya Chan was also asking. We were talking about timetable on the last occasion. Our colleague had also written, but we don't have a reply. Could you give us a timetable regarding 6.2c? You can, regardless of how you want to deal with it, can you give us a timetable? Yes, we can do so, but I want to add, we see there are different approaches amongst the departments, and can we unify that? Well, if you think that it warrants a separate approach, you need to explain. Well, the different departments have a different approach. It's because there are different legislations, different ordinances. So we'll go back and look at what can be done. If we will highlight the obstacles. We are open-minded, but we would like a timetable. Well, Chairman, I want to say that even if we do have different ordinances, but governance, such as disclosure, accounting, you might have more disclosure requirements or less depending on legislation. But I want to unify. If we need to disclose accounting, if you want if you need to provide an audit report, you have to. Well, you shouldn't say that because there are 3 different departments and we need 3 totally different standards. It would be hard for charitable organizations to comply. I want to follow up on the task force. Do you have different department officials attending? Is it intra-departmental, intra-bureau? What's the composition of your task force? Chairman, in June, we will convene a coordinating meeting. We invited Home Affairs, Lands Department, the Efficiency Unit, SWD, and we also invited the Government Chief Information Officer, and we will look at how it can be unified, and we'll look at the standards, and we'll have a discussion there. So, okay, we'll wait for your meeting, and you can respond to the timetable question. Well, if you look at this report, I recommend that in, for example, 6.10, there are a lot of actual practical recommendations, and the Secretary can discuss these items. For example, in 6.10b, information available to the public, we have 3 activities, 3 departments. So could you standardize that, the format? Could you standardize the procedure? You can respond to that. And in C, setting up a platform of coordination. That means if charitable organizations they need to apply for a license, can they just do so on one website or just one contact point? So if you set aside the difficulties mentioned by LRC, these are practical, specific points. So, Secretary, regarding 6.10 BC, could you give us some specific responses? Chairman, the meeting in June, we are dealing with the issues mentioned in 6.10 specifically, for example, such as good governance. We will expand the guidelines such that charitable organizations are aware of the guidelines, and then B, disclosure to public, that is transparency. If we will strengthen the 1823 service, and in C, regarding the platform, Mr. Kenneth Leung talked about one-stop service. We had dealt with that. So after discussion, we can provide you with our progress update. I'd like to ask the Secretary, well, after discussion, could you provide us with the report? If your report is available in August, all we can say is that you will discuss that in the meeting, and we cannot include that information in our report. Well, in mid-July, 12th of July, we will submit our report on PAC's Report 68. So, aside from Chapter 1, we will hand it in later. So, we would like you to convene your meeting and include your timetable, so that would help us draft our report. Okay, that can be done. We can meet the 12th of July because we can have the conclusion from their June meeting. The Secretary, you used to be a PAC member. You should be familiar. He's even more senior than I am, and these are forward-looking, and it helps us. It helps us in governance. It helps with disclosure, and it helps us in the value of money. So after your meeting, you need to provide us with a paper so that we can add that to our report to the House Committee to the legislative session on 12th of July. We will provide that information to the PAC. Well, that would round out our report, and we don't need to wait for a lot of supplemental information. Well, Chairman, that more or less sums up all the questions in Chapter 2, if not 100%, 90+%. So, in the remaining of time, I'd like to hand over to my colleagues. Tanya, the first thing I want to ask Audit Commission, the whole investigation regarding Report 2, it's the time frame is October. It says that they will write a letter to the department. Do you have that letter? And before your investigation, will you notify the departments? And when was this letter issued? Director, the Commissioner, rather. In paragraph 10, we started our work in October 2016, but previously there was communication. I don't have that information. If necessary, we can provide that after the meeting. Yes, I would like them to provide that, because on the last occasion we had asked the departments, but they did not respond. So could we have supplement from the departments, Mr. Secretary or Mr. Law? Do you have any supplement? Did you receive the letter from the Audit Commission? Chairman, 29th of September 2016, we received notice from the Audit Commission. Chairman, before we move forward, we need to refer to the verbatim record. In my questioning on page 31, from the last meeting till today, the Home Affairs and other departments had responded. The Home Affairs response is in Gen 9, and I have to refer to the English, and they also added a legal opinion summary. But I want to ask, the people involved were myself, the Secretary and Chairman, and there are a few pages. In the second part, I had previously asked that in the 2 meetings, the LRC report was issued in December 2013, and as the Secretary said, he was not the Secretary for HAB, but 1 month later, according to the audit report, they had some work progress, and the audit report mentioned that paragraph 6.8a, it mentioned that there was an internal consultation regarding 9 bureaus and departments, and between February and April 2014, and they received a reply up to the June of 2015, and they were able to summarize it into a preliminary document. And in August 2015,
and also October 2016, they had 2 interdepartmental meetings. Last time I put questions to them. Now the director replied that there were exchange of letters and also provided information to members for reference. I want to confirm the following. Now meetings, the second meeting, the 4th of October 2016, the director confirmed that they received a notice of the Commission of Audit was on the 26th of September. And then, according to Gen 1, there were exchanges of documents. Grace Lee said that the first email dated the 30th of September. It's obvious. I asked the question. They used the term revive discussion. And whether the word revive is controversial or not, I checked the word revive. I would not call it resurrection, but it should at least be active in the past. I want to ask the Director of Bureau. I asked him to show me that the first interdepartmental meeting, August 2015 until the email date. Now there were some notes, but in between that period, what was the progress? Perhaps you ask this question first. The Secretary, the Policy Secretary, are you clear of the dates? Yes, I'm clear about the dates. First, let me tell Ms. Chen, the 29th of September 2016, the Audit Commission contacted us for the first time, and whether we reconvened the meeting afterwards. I can inform Ms. Chen that before the 29th of September 2016, on the 19th of September 2016, we invited the department to start the work. Now, would the Policy Secretary point out which document to me? On the 19th of September, we invited the departments, the FEHD, the HAD, and the SWD to discuss. Well, can you show us a paper? Well, we can give you a supplementary paper afterwards. The second question is the work between the 2 meetings. Chairman, the issue is rather broad and it involves many departments. Since the first meeting, from time to time, we have had contact with the department. The 30th of September 2016, we discussed with them on the supplementary information. We asked them to provide supplementary information concerning certain departments, for example, LWB. On the 2nd of October 2015, we asked for further information. If Ms. Chen wants to know more, she can refer to Gen 1. Which page, please? Which page? Gen 1, or which page of Gen 1? In different appendices. Gen 1 starts from October. Can you have something earlier? R68 to Gen 1. From A, B, C, D all the way to I, there are emails. This is the bunch of documents. As pointed out by the chairman, I saw this 4th of October 2016, you had a meeting with the HAD, HAB, FEHD, and SWD, and you had to invite people to come. I asked for the dates. I just want to. I put up the brackets because I want to know what transpired before between the brackets. I asked for progress, if any, and if there is any, the progress still too small. In fact, Grace Lee is responsible for many, many things. If you look at her portfolio, it is very big. I just want to find out the problem. Chairman, if we can consolidate the time frame or the chronology for you. Now we have only Gen 1. We have the chronology in Gen 1. If now you started in October, but you did the preparation in September. Yes, we'll provide a chronology for you. Yes, I will also draw up a chronology. I do have one. 21st of July 2015, he assumed office. So I have a chronology, and there are things which were not looked after by him before that date. Now it is very complicated, as he said, but the LRC made 18 reclamations, or rather recommendations, and they only asked for an authority or commission in the long term. This is the only one of the 18. But what about the 17 other recommendations? Have they been followed up? In fact, the recommendations have been listed. 18 minus 1, the 17 recommendations have been organized into 4 major categories. In 2014, in the 2014-15 emails, the colleague assisted departments on the policy directions. 4 points were listed, and they were in paragraph 6.2. And the director, this policy secretary, explained a lot and spoke at length, but they were not related to the 4 points. I just want to know what you have been doing in the past 2 years. Over the years, you only work on the point which the recommendation didn't ask you to do anything. Now that's maybe a personal view, but I still want to ask you, what have you done concerning the 4 points? And to be fair, does the Bureau understand the role as carved out by the LRC? Is type of a terms of reference or responsibility? One controversial issue is that the Bureau considers itself to be a facilitator, but I see the recommendation as a coordinator rather. Now, we have the benefit of the information, all the information before us. But when they received the document, they might not have all the information, or they might not have the information as much as we now have. We have to be fair. Whether they are the facilitator or coordinator, chairman is on this point. Now, today we conduct a review, we look back, but on that day they face a lot of things. We can ask them. Now, on that day when they received the documents, what was their understanding of their role? That may be a better approach. Chairman, we have to be fair to them. What is their role? If their role is really a facilitator, they will have less responsibility. But if they are the coordinator, then they will play a more important role. Now, the CS4A asks your bureau to take up the responsibility. What should be your role? Now, when you received the report, what was your role? And as for your terms of reference, according to the LRC's report. Now, Chairman, let me first address the 4 points. I quoted the LRC report, and in fact what I said was actually related to this. These 4 points. It was about regulation, is completely related. The second question was that the LRC disclosed its report, submitted its report to the government. In fact, the CS4A chaired a meeting with various departments. Later, the supervision of charitable organizations was spread out over different departments, and HAB was just one of the departments. After discussion, the CFOA was of the view that the HAB would play the role of the coordinator, but the CFOA understood that we were unable to oversee other departments. Other departments are under different, governed by different ordinances. After we discuss the issue, we would report to the CSOA. If need be, there may be some changes, and that may require the discussion of the EXCO, but that would be the next step. Chairman, to be fair, we need to consider the extent of their responsibility. Last time, Mr. Low said that they sought legal advice, and I want to ask concerning the legal advice, when was that sought, and why can't the full piece of legal advice be given to us? In Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 investigation, the departments refused to give us the complete legal advice. But in 1997, when there was the PAC discussion and PAC report, we were given the complete legal advice attached to the document. Well, I don't know whether they don't trust us. Now, Chairman, you also asked whether other approaches can be adopted. The explanation by the administration is by LPP. But in fact, the client is HAB. If the client waive LPP, then the legal advice can be disclosed to some people or disclosed to the public. Why we are not given the whole legal advice? The Deputy Secretary it is referred to in paragraph 6.8 with regard to the legal advice. We consulted the DOJ in September 2016. Now, we had a meeting to discuss the directions concerning different charitable objects. Can legislation be made to define that? Can there be a unified list of registration? Or can there be a single authority regulating the charitable organizations and dealing with breaches? We discussed these principles. As for the principle, as for the Cyprus doctrine, that's about implementation. The LRC recommends legislation. As for the Charity Commission, if it is to apply the Cyprus doctrine, that is another issue. Now we need to consider uniformed or a single registration, and then it will come to then we will have to discuss implementation. Now that's the reason for the time difference. When we ask the departments in respect of the recommendations of the LRC, we include everything in the report, including the Cyprus doctrine. Well, I have not seen that in the documents. On the 24th of August 2015, HAB issued the information or the letter email to the departments. It pointed out the 4 directions. There was nothing on the authority or commission or whatever. Anyways, it is clearly shown in the paper. This doubt is always lingering in my mind, and that is after the first interdepartmental meeting, or rather concerning the first interdepartmental meeting, were there any minutes? Were there any minutes? Or you have the initial assessment document as the notes of meeting or as minutes of meeting? So you want to ask whether there were any minutes of meeting, of the first meeting, concerning the initial assessment document. If you look backwards, now after the first before the first meeting, we asked the departments in writing, and then we consolidated the views of departments, and then we added the HAB's view, and then we come up with the 4 major points, and that was the basis for the first meeting. And after the first meeting, there was an email basing on the document. There were different views, and then the departments were asked to use the base document as the document as basis, and then add their comments. The email after 1 or 2 weeks after the meeting had consolidated the direction, and also departments were asked to give comments on the way forward and also on their views. Was it Appendix C, Gen 1, page 45, at the 24th of August? Was it the document? Yes, it was.
頭先佢
At the outset, Ms. Chan asked about the DOJ opinion. And in the audit report then, you gave us the entire legal opinion of the DOJ. Why is it that this time around you can't do it? That you only give us the summary? This is in Gen 9, right? Yes, we have explained that in Gen 9, but we can say it again. This is the product of our discussion with the DOJ. You agreed with the DOJ, so you don't think it's necessary to review the entire opinion, because as I said, the autonomy rests with the HAB. Lawyers give you the opinion, but it is not up to the two of you to agree. It is up to you to agree with the legal opinion given. In the end, you have the decision power. In Gen 9, you gave us an explanation. But you did not tell us your philosophy or rationale. Why is it that we can't be shown the entire legal opinion? You cited the doctrine, but the Pt2 doctrine has nothing to do with this report. Chairman. The DOJ gives legal opinion to bureaus and departments, and there is a principle to govern this, because even if the DOJ gives us legal advice, it is still protected by the LPP. But we understand you have the need to look at this kind of opinion in your work. Therefore, we give you a summary of the legal advice given to us by the DOJ. On the one hand, we'd like to apply the principle of LPP, but at the same time, we think that the committee should be able to get this kind of legal opinion. So it's a kind of compromise. And the DOJ or the responsible bureau, we do think that this is an appropriate arrangement. And if you look at the annex and the legal advice there, it is a kind of a factual legal principle that has been applied. Nothing has been hidden. But the Bureau and the DOJ would like to follow the principle and also to respect LPP. Chairman, I will say again, at the time of PAC report number 29, that was in 1998, sorry, the legal opinion appeared in Appendix 28. I'd like to point out that the present arrangement must be the result of something happening to the DOJ or the Bureau. I think the situation is not satisfactory. The PAC does not have sight of the legal opinion, even if it is kept away from the public. Can I ask more questions, Chairman? I read Gen 1, and throughout I only saw drafts, including the LRC report on charities, including departmental views. You say meetings have been held, departments have given you views, but you are the coordinator. Did you consolidate a final document? I'd like to seek an understanding into it. I read the entire paper. It is chopped confidential, and then it says it's a draft. This is dated the 10th of August 2015. I don't know whether there were subsequent emails and there were attachments to those which we are not seeing. Since you have the responsibility as a coordinator, did you consolidate the views? This is an important document. The DS, can you answer the question referring to Appendix B of Gen 1? Thank you, Chairman. We are still carrying on the work, so we do not have a consolidated paper. No, in Appendix B, well, look at Appendix B of Gen 1. Start from there. Well, they say they are carrying on the work. At Appendix B, you have already said that you are carrying on the work. Is that right? You are working. But, Chairman, this is still a working document. It is not the final paper. Well, there will never be a final paper until you have completed your work. This is a process, and you are still working. Yes, Secretary. Chairman, there may be two levels. One, after our meeting, we would collate views. That we always do. We give the views back to the departments. This is Appendix B, right? Gen 1, Appendix B. You can start from there. What have you done? Because that can prove that you are working. Yes, we are working. The second level is, as you said, Chairman, after departments have reached conclusions, we'll certainly consolidate the views, and that will be submitted to the CS4A. This is for the future. Okay, Chairman, we'd like to look forward. Can we have a timetable? They say within this month, they will have another meeting on short-term proposals, following up on the meeting in October 2016. But this report was issued in December 2013. I'd like to know whether they have a timetable. If you have a timetable, you can press the departments for responses. Secretary, I think you have answered the question, but you can say it again. In the meeting in June, I think you have a timetable. Can you say it again? Secretary, at different meetings, I have said that this is a complex issue. But it is not that because it's complex and difficult and so we don't do anything. That's not the case. We would like to roll out short-term measures as soon as possible to enhance transparency and accountability. And if we can unify certain approaches of departments, we'd like to do that. Even if PAC has not completed your meetings, at the end of June, we are going to conduct a meeting to tackle the three aspects I said. After that, we will submit our papers to the PAC for reference. Good, good. Are there other members who would like to ask questions? No. I have nothing to ask for the time being. Okay, carry on, Ms. Chan. Let me see. I'd like to ask the Secretary this question first. I have read the LRC report. It's not very different. I'd like to say that, Chairman, what is most interesting is that I was saying that his colleague listed the 4 categories, but in the letter there were only 3 directions. One is missing. It's all right as long as they keep working. But actually, in the 2013 LRC report, the 4 directions have been given. In their reply, they talk about major challenges. And they listed 3 challenges. The first one, the LRC mentioned that in 9 and 10, and the second challenge is that in number 7, it was recommended saying that there should be a unified regulator, but that is not so easy, and then so on and so forth. But then there is this important proposal by the LRC. Sorry, I'd like to jump to that point, and that is about smart donors. That is the 13th recommendation. I'd like to seek some understanding into that. Could that be advanced? Because you need to have the cooperation of the departments, of course, but with regard to smart donors, since the LRC has made that recommendation a long time ago, can you give some consideration to that? Chairman, Ms. Chan, mentioned our work and also some charitable purposes not regulated at present. Well, we are not going to wait. We would like to use the existing reference guide, and we would issue those to the organizations concerned, hoping that they will adopt it, so there can be a certain degree of transparency and accountability. Good. Chairman, I don't have too many long questions. I just like to mention again online fundraising. I hope in the short term there will be measures. This is a recommendation of the RC and it is becoming popular. I think you really need to tackle that issue. It's an important point. Okay, that's a view. Any other questions? If not, I'd like to thank the Secretary and the field directors. Chairman, any other questions? If you have a question, ask it. Okay, if you say there are not more questions, that's it. Thank you very much, the administration. If we have more questions, we'll follow up in written form. I just hope that, Secretary, you can talk to the DOJ, that we hope that the DOJ will agree that we can see the legal opinion. If, as you said very clearly in your summary, and if we think that we should not publish the legal opinion, we should still want to see it within the PAC. Tanya, is that okay? We'll ask them to consider that. Chairman, we'll go back and take a look. So we can write a comprehensive report so that we know you are not hiding anything. Well, we are not talking about the legal opinion given by the DOJ to you, but because the legal opinion may have an impact on the public and the frontline work. This will allow us to write a more comprehensive report. If we think there is a need, well, we don't want to invoke P&P in order to see it, but if we can cooperate so that, well, we know your difficulty. I know the DOJ is involved, but please talk to the DOJ and allow PAC members to have sight. All right. Thank you. We'll follow up. Well, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask one more thing. Is it that we'll be able to know when they have meetings? Can we monitor the situation? Well, they will have a meeting in June, and then they will give us a timetable telling us what short-term measures will be adopted. After we have written our report, we can still make use of the clearance sheet. You know that is what we usually do, right? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you. The next meeting will be held on the 27th. It will be on Chapter 1. Director of Lands, you will be on leave on the 27th. Can you get a representative? We may not have someone as good as you are, but we understand you are going to be on leave. Don't change your leave. You can send a representative. You don't have to change your leave. We don't have many questions for you, but if you can send a smart colleague, we know him or her very well. All right? Thank you.